Welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm joined today by Denis Duri. For those that know Denis, he's our expert in the cloud space and FinOps. So he'll be joining us today to take us through some of the exciting things that we can do beyond visibility. So we're starting to look at the things that matter once you start to get control, visibility of your public clouds out there. The next stage is really, well, let's put that money where your mouth is and start taking action on the things that you're finding within your cloud environment. So we're going to go through some details around that. Then he will give us a demonstration, talk through some of the common use cases that we're seeing today in the market. As we progress through this series, we've been tackling different capabilities on the Flexera One platform, and today we're focused on that right-hand side. So the three green boxes there, our cloud commitment management, the cost optimization, and the container and VM workload optimization. So quite squarely aimed at our FinOps and DevOps capabilities. So typically with this, we're working with your cloud ops people, the FinOps practitioners within your organizations out there. So we're focusing the topic today on those three things in particular. Why this is important for us as well, as you know, I always like to put our Gartner slides up here, not necessarily to talk about Gartner, but the importance here is around the convergence of these markets. So what we've seen over the years is that ITAM is still a core discipline in terms of we need to make sure we have visibility about what's out there on premise, on connected environments. SaaS management obviously is key to that, as well as more and more vendors push their solutions up into the cloud and providing those as a SaaS. But obviously with FinOps now, being front and center of everybody's mind, one of the biggest areas of spend in a lot of organizations. Now we see the three of these together being really that converged state. How do we deal with hybrid spend and risk challenges within your organization? So we firmly believe that we're positioned right, investing in the right areas to bring value for our customers. And it's not in one discipline. This is where the market and the IT world is headed. So I want to make sure that we cover as much as possible to make sure we are the go-to place for your spend and risk management. Now, the key driver today, and why we pivoted on this particular topic, and it's very similar to the SaaS management story, but cloud and SaaS spend is surpassing that of on-premise spend. Now, by 2027, whether that's 68% in some organizations, we're seeing more adoption of that cloud spend, but it's growing and growing. So, the rate, particularly within APAC, is very similar to this. We're seeing a lot more of those hybrid type use cases, and big focus on Azure, AWS. But the challenge a lot of the time is, we're in this world of, we're not typically non-compliant anymore, but I can actually spend more than I need to. And that's the same with SaaS and cloud. And this is where the focus is in terms of wasted spend within the cloud. Now, today we're going to tackle that in two forms. It's great to see that the, cloud cost optimization gets us that visibility, but how do we take action on that and help have a meaningful impact on the reduction of spend? So what I'll do is hand over to Denis, and I'll invite him to come on stage with me. There he is, the man himself of the hour. And we're going to start tackling this question.
Excellent. Thanks, Nathan. So I guess a lot of the customers that I've spoken to, and a lot of people in general, when they come to cloud costs and automation, is they'll say that we're actually struggling to get recommendations actions. What are the other options that we have to optimize our environments? All right, Nathan, on the next slide, please. All right, so what we aim to do with the Flexera One platform is not just give you segments of what you can see, but give you a holistic view. So from seeing the data, understanding where it's allocated, analyzing that, providing meaningful recommendations, all right, from commitments, say IaaS services, right through to managing Kubernetes environments. So that way you can see your spend and continuously see, optimize and perform better and continue on doing that. Next slide, Nathan. Automating recommendations. So within the Flexera One platform, which I will show you later on, we have the ability to look at different recommendations, but also provide that business context. A lot of the time, engineers, application teams, and people in general will get a recommendation, whether that's from a hyperscaler or another product. It'll take them days or weeks to analyze. And then by the time they get there, they say that the recommendations are not necessarily meaningful or useful, so they're not going to implement it. So there's opportunity that is being passed, but there's also time which is taken to analyze that. The way that we look at it is how can we apply those teams' business contexts, so that way when they do get a recommendation, it is meaningful. So when they see it, the conversation is no longer about how long will it take me to analyze and make sure the recommendation is good. It changes to how long will it take me to implement this recommendation because it meets our business requirements. So this is one version or one way to do it. The other one is then how do we get to the point of automating some, if not all of these types of recommendations, because we have a trusted platform that meets our business requirements. So setting that up is really important. You have your visibility, you have your understanding of recommendations, and then you drive that automation. So that way your engineering teams don't have to spend their time reviewing and looking at these, and that's why they're often ignored. Next slide, please. The second part to cover off is around commitments. So where you can't get recommendations actioned or it takes a lot of time, something you can do that doesn't require engineering effort, application team involvement, and so forth is around commitment management. We do have Cloud Commitment Management, formerly Spot Eco, and what this does for you is it enables you to quickly employ reserved instances, savings plans, committed use discounts, so that way you can achieve fast cost savings within the cloud with very little effort. So what that means for you is that you can say, here I am today, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I do it. A lot of the companies that I've spoken to do make purchases of reserved instances. However, they don't manage it beyond the original purchase. So if you have a look to the left, you'll see that without a commitment management platform, you'll have a balance of RIs and SPs that are used, but not necessarily fully used. So you're wasting money, and there's money on the table. All right? And as time goes past, sure, you start to use more and more of these commitments, but then you're now undercommitted. So your 100% utilization, however, your coverage starts to drop. So it's costing you money. With a commitment management tool like ours, what happens is that we make it dynamic. Because we know that cloud environments are always changing. There's always different requirements, new projects coming on board, projects going off, that these commitments need to change with your environment. So what we do is we will do the buy, sell, exchange of RIs and SPs for you. So that way we can make sure that your coverage is always high, but so is your utilization, but with very low wastage. This keeps you saving money as opposed to wasting money. Also means that you don't have to have a team of people constantly and consistently analyzing what you're using. And by the time you make those purchases, they may be outdated and irrelevant. The last component, if reserved instances and commitment management is something that you're still working on, and same with recommendations, is around your DevOps teams. And this could be in the form of Kubernetes. A lot of organizations are modernizing into containers or containered environments. So we have a platform as a part of Flexera One called Ocean. And what this does, it helps with your DevOps teams to do less of the administrative overhead items, so they have more time to focus and prioritize work that they need to continue on with. And this could be CI/CD pipelines, this could be managing workloads, this could be implementing new products, being innovative, being proactive. And the way we do that is to be able to manage your current clusters, enable the auto scaling for you, the ability to manage spot marketplace instances for Kubernetes. That's something that we do very well. Because we understand the spot marketplace. So imagine being able to put some of your workload, whether it's all the development sitting on top of spot instances, saving 70, 80, 90% of cost, or even part of your production environment. We will automate that for you, and we will swap out and exchange as required, so that way your uptime isn't affected. We also understand that if you are using commitment management or have RIs in place, we will utilize those first. This means that we won't just put something on a spot instance because it's cheap. We know that you have a reserved instance. Let's utilize that within the node sizing before we move anything to spot, so you're fully covered. Other areas of automation that we work with is bin packing, the ability to make sure that you have as much workload on those nodes, because a node running at 90% doesn't impact the services or containers running on top of it. The containers are still servers, still get memory and CPU, but your utilization of those nodes is high. Also means that you don't have to scale out. You don't have to have many running to service your workloads. So we can automate all that as well. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Denny. And just before we jump into that live demonstration where Denny would go through and do his magic, as he normally does, but we want to focus here on a customer case study. And then this is from the cloud commitment management side. So as Denny was talking about, those buying and selling of reserved instances and savings plans. So as you can see here, I think the key highlight for me was the quarterly savings. So looking at $2.6 million here and over 300 man hours saved. So significantly reducing the time spent trying to just get on top of and managing the buying, selling and planning and the strategy around making this the most cost optimized position for those commitments. This is where commitment management takes away that workload from your teams, and we can do that for you. We're seeing some really good returns here on the effective savings rates above 50%, typically on your compute and also non-compute plans as well. So a very high return on investment for this particular product. So what I'll do, enough pro-shareware, marketware, whatever you want to call it. Let's get in, and Denny's going to show you what that really looks like within the platform.
Excellent. Thanks, Nathan. If you can unshare your screen so I can share mine. All right. So it should pop up in a second. Excellent. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll start from the beginning with the business context around recommendations. Although we have hundreds of different recommendations that are available to you within the Flexera One platform, I'll focus on the most common use case, which is right-sizing EC2 instances, and how we can apply that business context to those recommendations. If I click on apply, we give you the ability to make many different selections here around what a recommendation should look like for your organization. We can automate the actions. You can target these to different accounts or tags as well. So you can start with lower level development test environments to start this automation process. So that way you can build trust in the platform, but also get comfortable with how it works. All this is done through a change process. So we won't automatically apply it unless someone has reviewed and said, yes, this meets our requirements and we can apply this. All right, you can filter this down to account numbers. Again, targeted approach. You can decide whether you want aggressive or conservative type recommendations. This is a fantastic way to start using this against production environments where you're not convinced that a big bang approach is going to ensure that an application is stable. So we can make continuous recommendations. So one size down, allowing your application team or development teams to monitor. And if there's another recommendation that pops up for this same service, we will display it. They can then make that decision again. And so we can continue to do that whilst monitoring the services behind. All right, you can email exclusion tags. This is how you would say, please do not apply this recommendation to a set of tags or environments. You could have environment as critical production. You could have owners as someone. You can have a team name, business name, whatever that looks like as a tag. All right, and decide if it just meets any of this criteria, don't apply the recommendation, or it must meet all this criteria. So you're very, very targeted to ensure that this recommendation meets what you need. All right, we'll get into the very important section now. This is around minimum savings. You may not want to see a recommendation that saves you $10. So you might say, I need to save at least $100 a month in order to make this a recommendation worthwhile, because people and process cost money, and sometimes it's more valuable to leave a VM as it is than to spend 2-3 weeks of effort to right size down to save $100. You can target regions, and this is where you start to tune your recommendations. And what this means to you as an organization is, you're targeting memory, CPU, in other areas it's storage, IOPS. You decide how that looks for, say, your application. It could be both, it could be either. If you're in AWS and you don't have CloudWatch installed for those services, you're probably only going to get CPU. If you have something like New Relic or Datadog or Dynatrace where there's APIs available and this data exists, we can integrate with those through policies and then pull that information through. All right, so you decide there, you decide as the business application owner, what does an idle instance mean to you? All right, so you make that decision. How far back do we need to look in order for this recommendation to make the most business sense? All right, so we can go up to 90 days. Both Azure and AWS allow up to 90 days of metrics to be collected. So that way you can now say, is 30 days appropriate? Does it make sense? Or do we need a little bit longer? The threshold statistic. This here is very important, and I've used this quite a lot with many customers, especially around RDS instances, where workloads aren't constant or consistent, but peaky. And what we found is that you could set this to average, and every single recommendation will come back as a terminate because the average is like 0.5 CPU utilization. But what you'll see is that the maximum might be 50, 60, 70% CPU and memory. So it makes more sense to work off the maximums as opposed to the average or the P99, 95s, etc. And this means that the recommendations are more consistent because they meet your expected type of workloads. All right, and then you choose, what does underutilized mean? Once you're happy with that, you apply the policy, and then you can continue to apply these policies over and over again to meet all the different business areas, your application owners, your dev team's requirements. And then they just simply see these recommendations. They can trust them because it's based off their own requirements. And as I said, it moves those discussions from a why aren't we doing this to a when can we implement this, and what's that process look like?
So Denny, probably two questions that come up when everybody's looking at this as well is, firstly, how do we integrate this with an approval workflow system? Because maybe we want to follow the policy around change management. How does that look? And second, if you can cover as well, how extensible is this library? So I know we can see a number in the screen in front, but what can customers do with this if there's something that doesn't sort of fit their requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have policies that can integrate back with ServiceNow. We can integrate with Jira. And the reason I say we can is because it's all open code. We have all this sitting in a GitHub repository, which is public, and you're always welcome to look at it, to download that, fork it off, have a look. And if you're using the Flexera One platform today, you can start building your own policies that meet your requirements or modifying the ones that we have today. So integrating with a third-party platform like Jira, like ServiceNow, like Remedy is fairly straightforward. Because instead of sending an email to someone, you're saying, well, let's raise an incident or an alert to say, this has come up, it can assign it to the right person, and then they can make decisions. Where on the other side, we are open API, so we have APIs available for this. So from a ServiceNow, someone could change it to approved, and it could trigger an event to say, run this, it's approved on this side, and then Flexera One can take care of, say, a right-sizing recommendation. That's usually at the end of someone's maturity levels. So to start with, they just want to understand what they're getting and how they're getting it. Then they want to get into a third-party platform. And then once they're comfortable with that, they start to target and make these automations a reality. All right. So that would be integrating with ServiceNow. It's all open. So it's not a black box of recommendations. We tell you exactly how it's done. And as I said, you can modify these, you can build your own. Does that answer your question, Nathan?
Yep, it answered the question. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So let's say that you have this configured or not configured, or you're just getting the hyperscaler recommendations. The second area that you could use would be our commitment management. As I said, this means that you don't necessarily have to get the engineering teams involved. You also don't have to get the application owners involved, but they will reap the benefits of the cost savings. All right. And what this platform effectively does is helps you to manage those commitments. So we will analyze your environment. This is all backed by generative AI. So we'll understand what you're doing. We'll make the predictions of future workloads. We also have a human component to this because we understand that making a financial commitment is not everyone's cup of tea. And sometimes you want to talk to a human to say, why are we doing this? So we have essentially a white glove service of specialists who can sit with you. And every month you can sit down and go, okay, how are we tracking? What is changing in our environment? Are we doing something different? Is there changes happening? Is there something coming off board? How do we adjust this to make sure that we're continually optimizing your commitments? And that's always up to date, always redone, always analyzing. All right. And we'll give you information around how much you've saved, your effective savings rate. So in this instance here, we're seeing nearly 50% in savings across compute. And compute is, EC2, Fargate, EKS, etc. We do cover off non-compute as well. So that's your RDSs, your Redshifts, your Elasticaches. We can show you with spot instances. And we'll also give you information around how many changes were made or actions were done between the dates that have been selected here. All right, as you'll see, we cover off a lot of services and we can effectively manage all your RIs and SPs across your AWS, your Azure, and your GCP. This will give you a lot of information up front quickly so you can understand what you're doing and how well you're doing. So if you look at your effective savings rates, we can put that into a table. You can download that table as well. So that way you can share this information if need be. We can understand your usage and waste. You'll notice that we have very little waste. And that's purely because we're consistently exchanging and managing your RIs and SPs. The last thing you want as an organization is to make a financial commitment to something that doesn't get used or gets used for 2 months. And then for the next 10 to 34 months, nothing happens. I have had a customer where they made 100 and something purchases of 3-year upfront RIs. And in the time that we had the platform running, we realized that for the last 60 days, there'd been 0 utilization of those reserved instances. So that was wastage because they were working off data that took them a while to get to that implementation point. We can speed that process up and make sure that you're not implementing something that is going to go to waste. All right, as I said, all this data is available. We'll show you your coverage. We'll show you utilization. We want to ensure that you're very informed about the commitments that you're making. All right, and that is all within the platform. All right, the last section that I will cover, if you're okay with RIs or you're not going to do it, your recommendations are okay, or you're not using the platform, there's also our Ocean, which is hosted in Spot, but being integrated within the Flexera One platform. This is where your DevOps engineers can utilize us to help manage their Kubernetes environments. And this does continuous optimization, continuous scaling, power scheduling, healing, etc. All right. The one thing that we do and we do very well, as I noted, is being able to run your Kubernetes environment on top of Spot instances. All right. As you can see, the estimated savings are running on the Spot at the moment is around 57%. All right. We will also give you right-sizing recommendations. So for containers that are over-provisioned, this is very common in Kubernetes as they deploy. That's why you usually have large nodes or lots of nodes. So you've scaled out quite heavily because the size of the containers requires it. We can either just display or show you those recommendations. We can also fully automate those recommendations for you so your containers are consistently and constantly being right-sized. We have the ability for bin packing. As I said, this is how do I get as much onto a single node for high utilization, and we'll even show you where we've done all this, what we're moving. So always informed, always understand what's happening. So for Rightsizing, we'll give you data around the containers, what's there, what's the current CPU memory, what it should be, and whether you want to action them. We use virtual node groups, so you can group together your applications onto like servers because they're going to use the same type of CPU memory node sizes. You can then use these for shutdown hours or power scheduling. So whether you want to power schedule just a group, whether you want to power schedule a whole cluster, we can do that as well. Now, I did mention that we know the spot marketplace very well, and I'll show you an example of how we do that. If I just click on groups here, this will show me all the Elastic groups that I have. I'll click on a Ocean one that we have for Kubernetes. And I'll just show you the configuration. If you take a look, this is our spot market scoring. So essentially what we do is we understand your regions and sizes that you may have selected here. We can let us manage that for you, and we'll give it a ranking. All right, so if it's highly ranked, it usually means it's more stable and won't go away within a couple of minutes. And we would never put you on something that is quite low. So we have, as I said, we have AI managing this. It is always monitoring the market. It's always making changes. So if something's about to disappear from the spot marketplace, we know it's happening beforehand. We can then shift workloads to another instance size and move that across. So that way your uptime is always kept, so enterprise grade uptime running on spot type instances.
So Denis, there's just a question that's come through here. It says, do you control the tainted nodes, or is that the platform K8's ownership?
Good question. I'm not 100% sure, so I won't be able to answer the question here. But if you do reach out to us with that question, and I'll make a note of it, I'll get the right information for you.
Thanks, Denis.
All right. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to help answer them if I can.
Just to wrap up on your side, Denis, I think from the Ocean to CCO integration, can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. So today we have an integration that allows you to pull in your nodes, your clusters, your data from Kubernetes, and I'll show it in here. All right, so that way you can start to align your Kubernetes costs alongside your current AWS, Azure, GCP costs. And that's something that a lot of organizations struggle with, especially considering that Kubernetes is usually a black box and managed by someone else. All you see within AWS is the node size and the costs. You don't necessarily know who's using what inside and how much of that they're using. So you can't align, a namespace cost to anything or a container cost to anything. We'll bring all that data in. This is always being improved as well. So as we innovate and grow and tighten that integration, more and more information will come in here. But we'll be able to see all the resources and types in here as well. And we'll even give you the resource list so you have a full understanding of what it is that's there, what types, the costs, the utilization, etc. all comes into the platform. We'll also be able to give you the recommendations around container right-sizing within the platform. So that's all tied together. So you have your visibility, and then you'll have your container right-sizing.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Denis.
You're welcome.
All right. If there's no other questions, we may wrap up there, Denis. So if I can just take over for a second. Thank you, sir.
All yours.
Look, thanks very much for joining the session today. Look, as always, if you feel you want to know more and explore these topics with us, with myself, Denis, or Hojun from the team, who are the cloud experts in this space, then please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can set up some time to go through this in a bit more detail. Please don't forget, this will be recorded. We have it on demand. So we've got 3 in the series now, and we're looking ahead now for the next 2 over the next 2 months. As always, please feel free to reach out to me to let me know some topics that you want us to cover in future sessions as well. So once again, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us today, and pleasure to talk to you again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.